You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Sree Sreenivasan, and I am your host, Lasse. Hi, Sree, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm really thrilled to have you with us today. I think it's an awesome opportunity to talk with someone as experienced as you.
Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Cool, and let's just, as we usually do, just dive into a question, and then you are able to, allowed to just bring in your experience during your responses, and then we'll have a chat. So the first question I like to start off with is we have AI now. Or we've had AI for a while, but we have the generative AI where everyone is able to produce content on the fly and in great volumes. Um, and this sort of everyone's like, this is perfect for us because now we can produce emails much faster. But we only have a limited amount of attention as humans, don't we? And I know you've spoken about this before. I just like to have you reflect a little bit about what is this going to do for our attention span that we now have even more of this.
Yeah, it's amazing time to be thinking about this because it's 1 year since the launch of ChatGPT, which became the marker for the impact of generative AI, and it's a huge moment a year ago, and so much has changed since then.
Mm,
And the way I look at it is that, in some ways, it just at a simple level, as you said, emails faster, emails more productive, yeah, more content being created. Some people look at that and say that's fantastic. Other people look at that and say, oh my God, we've got more content. Do we need that? But on a deeper level, why this matters, why we're at this moment, why there's so much excitement, why there's so much hype and so much worry is that, as you said, AI has been around forever. Steven Spielberg made a movie in 2001 called AI,
mm,
Artificial Intelligence. And we are seeing ways in which people use AI kind of on a daily basis, even if they never think about it, even autocorrect or
mm,
Grammarly or any
true.
of these tools. That kind of it's kind of around us. But in this 1 year where we've seen a massive amount of hype and opportunity and concern in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. I compare this moment to the dawn of the social media world, where when Instagram was young, when Twitter was young, when Facebook was young, and you could see the potential, you could see the problems, and from that, we've seen all the changes that have happened in the world thanks to social media, both very good and very bad. Or I
Mm,
even go back probably another, till 1995 or so, when the internet was new and you could see that this was going to change things, but we didn't know how much or in what direction or for how long. There were people, as you know, who thought it was a fad. You saw Bill Gates in 1995 kind of dismiss social media the internet as not being as game changing as it would turn out to be. So, if you look at generative AI right now, there's so much potential and so many pitfalls, and we as people who care about the intersection of life, technology, work, the future of work, all of those areas, they're all going to be affected, and they're going to be affected in ways that we're not ready for. And
mm,
there will be people who obviously make a lot of money, as has already happened. And uh, there are signs that there's a difference between this moment and the moment in 1995, or the difference in the moment when 2005, 2007, 2010. And we can talk about all of that. And there's so much to discuss with the dawn of AI and generative AI.
I really like your referral to social media because I used to use that and say, so we had AI for a while. It's not something that just came down on Mount Sinai to Moses or something like that. That is how I tend to like to phrase it. We've had it in social media, especially where we've seen a narrow model with a more strict objective goal function, right? Just uh, giving us echo chambers, reinforcing things that we didn't know we were being reinforced about, like flat earthers and everything that happened with the American elections. Uh, it has one goal there to just give us just to maximize advertising profit for the social media company, keep our attention just focused on them. So it doesn't care what we were seeing. So we've had AI for a long time. We also have it in Google Maps and everywhere else. But the problem now, the difference now is that we have something that's so broad in general and can be applied to everything. So AI is not something new. We've also known about the trouble of AI, giving just reproducing bias, reproducing fallacies, just giving us more of that. So how come we haven't realized that and sort of come to terms with that or found a mechanism to work with it? Why don't we have these uh, laws to govern AI? It's not something new, as you say. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, in even why haven't we learned the lessons from previous inflection points like this? Why
Yeah.
we haven't? Yeah, because I think that we underestimate the the company's true motivations, right? We overestimate that they will want to do the right thing, but companies, big tech companies, don't want to do the right thing. They want to maximize profit, and
Mm,
therefore they're not going to be regulated properly. They're not going or want to be regulated properly. They're not going to side on the take the side of customers or everyday users. They're going to want to make as much money and you know that's just the way they are. So I think part of the reason why we haven't learned lessons from the previous tech crises that we've had is that we think these companies are benign and that they'll do
mm,
the right thing, but they don't do the right thing. In almost in any instance, when they've had a choice of doing the right thing or the slightly less good thing, or to do the fully wrong thing, they're always aiming towards getting the slightly less good thing or even completely the wrong thing is what they're good at. And so I think that's part of the reason why we're in this. We just believe, many of us, there are obviously strong critics of technology. I myself call myself a tech evangelist and tech skeptic. It's hard to be
mm,
both, but you have to be both to survive in this world. But we just believe that these companies are going to help us. And of course, in many cases they do. But what their interests are and what the interests of everyday people are don't intersect as much as we think they do.
mm. So, are you are you and I know this is something I saw a post from you, I think, the other day. So instead of maximizing profit, maybe going for a mission. Is that what you're saying? Are you for the Twitter to X thing, or I know it's a detour,
Oh my
but I
God!
think it's
Here
interesting
we are
because
talking
that's
about
not maximizing profit. They don't care. He doesn't care about ad revenue. What
yeah,
did he call it? He called it blackmail, right?
yeah. Well, but well, oh my God! If you get me started on Elon Musk, we'll be here. Well, I hope you have 3 hours. Elon Musk has done very interesting, very far reaching, game changing things. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. And when he bought Twitter, I said he can be a force for good. That was my headline. Can be force for good, but he won't be because the way he thinks, the way he looks at the world, the way he approaches what the world is to him is not what everyday people are affected by. Like there's this idea I have that as you know Michael Bloomberg, who has done a lot in the
Mhm,
world of news and information and data on Wall Street. He's the richest man in New York. When he became mayor of New York, I said the richest man in New York should not be the mayor of New York because
Mm,
there's an intrinsic conflict of interest. It won't be good for the city. I was wrong. He was a great mayor. He did many good things. Not everybody's perfect, but he did a lot of good things, and I was wrong. So I was willing to take the same idea that the world's richest man should not be the should not own the world's public town square. They should not
mm,
own that. Is and But because I was wrong on Bloomberg, maybe I'd be wrong on him. But of course, it turned out to be all wrong, and he was worse in every case than I predicted. By the way, I'm
mm,
very proud that in 2018 I wrote that Elon Musk must get off Twitter. 2018 must get off Twitter because his being on Twitter was distracting him from doing the
mm,
great things he could do, doing great things with Tesla, doing great things with SpaceX, doing great things was distracting him. And sure enough, I was wrong. Not only did he not get off Twitter, he bought the damn thing. And
yeah.
what he has done to it is in every direction where he could have made it better. The Twitter is not perfect. My God, people like me used to criticize it all the time. So much misinformation, disinformation, misogyny, hate.
Mm,
But it had it had a vital role to play in multiple things. Communications during emergencies, it had giving out news and information, following a story in breaking news, in connecting with writers and journalists and experts. It was the best platform for those things. And in each of those things, they have become worse in the last year. And so
mm,
the way I look at it is, and by the way, I know among your listeners, there will be lots of super fans of Elon Musk,
yes.
especially in Europe. People love him, is what I have seen, partly because he's not doing serious damage to the politics of Europe the way he's doing everyday damage to the politics of America. Maybe that's the reason. And because they're
But isn't this
his Teslas.
But isn't this something we should be scared of? You're alluding to it, obviously, but means of communication and very rich and very powerful people with very narrow-minded goals or focuses, right? I think it's interesting that someone like you says someone should get off social when you're one of the top global experts in social, Sree, right? And you can elaborate on that if you
Sure,
want
I
to in a
will. I'll
moment.
just say that people who know the evils of the technology, the dangers of the technology, are often the ones who treat the technology different for themselves versus the rest of the world. I'm talking about, how Bill Gates very famously wouldn't allow his children more than 30 minutes of screen time every day.
Mm.
There were stories of how
Yes.
Tim Cook wouldn't allow his niece or nephew, I forget, to get an iPad because he knows that the people who make the technology know its true powers and its true
Mm,
dangers. There have been stories about people in Silicon Valley who put their children in schools with no tech, no computers, no phones, just kind of nature and learning in an old fashioned way, where all the rest of
mm,
us are like, oh my God, my child needs more tech, more tech, more tech, right? So
yeah.
that's been a way to think about this. So when I say that a CEO like him should not be on Twitter, should not be, especially him, because he has a lot of issues with the way he sees the world, the way he speaks, the way he treats people, he should not be on it. Because I know better than a lot of people the problems with Twitter and the problems with
Mm,
social media. But I knew that this was bad for him, and now look at what he's done. For him, burning $44 billion is his right to do. Right? People have the right to do that. But what I hate about Elon Musk, among many other things, is that in the process, he fired half his staff. And those are thousands of people. There are thousands of folks whose jobs, whose livelihoods, whose sense of self worth
mm,
all disappeared overnight. And the cruelty was was part of what makes me so upset. And by the way, I talk a lot about Elon. Zuckerberg shouldn't be let off in any way. And the
No,
things that he has done, like take the metaverse, right? People like me and you knew right away this metaverse is not real, not now, not important. But he pivoted the
it's not a
whole.
product. I said it's not a product. It's a societal development, if at best something become we get immersed into
Someday
to
down the
some
road,
extent.
maybe. Someday down the I mean, that's why I love I don't know if you remember the Iceland tourism board made a very funny ad making fun of Zuckerberg and the metaverse almost immediately. If your listeners haven't seen it, they should Google it. Iceland tourism metaverse. It's one of the funniest things, and it captures this idea of these tech geniuses who are not geniuses necessarily all the time, but to back to the metaverse. So he pivots the entire company, spends $10 billion, and when it goes wrong, as it does almost immediately, he fires 10,000 people. 10,000
Mm,
people. And that's not just 10,000 people, that's all their family members, their immediate circles, the guy who does their laundry, the vegetable store, like everybody's affected by this. But it's never mentioned. In fact, your stock price goes up when you fire 10,000 people, right?
yeah, yeah.
And there's nobody to say no to these people. That's why, a lot of people give credit to Sheryl Sandberg for being the adult in the room. Do you remember that? But she has to be blamed for all the things that Zuckerberg did under her watch. Same thing with
But that
Linda Yaccarino is brought in. And even there, I said immediately, I said, if she's the right person to be brought in because of the advertising stuff, but if she can't sell advertisers on it, if she can't say no to Elon, it's over.
mm,
And that's exactly what's happened because she is not able to say no to him. Nobody's able to say no to him. And that's how we end up in this situation, which is so sad, so pathetic. And by the way, in a serious note, in the Moroccan flooding, in the Moroccan earthquake, the Libyan flooding, the war in Gaza, each of those emergency situations, life and death, people who work there tell us that Twitter used to be so useful and so important and so vital to keeping people alive. That's all been
mm,
destroyed by Musk and the things he's done, where anybody can buy the check mark, for example, where anybody can say whatever they want.
yeah.
All of those things that there were protocols, not perfect, but there were protocols that made Twitter a useful tool to save lives. That is
A super
gone.
powerful tool, right? Being misused and misguided, and I just think there is a circle to this, because in the beginning, and I already alluded to this before, you said that you wanted more focus on other things than profit, and now you are complaining about Zuckerberg and Musk being focused on other things than profit, their mission, right? To some extent, it was Zuckerberg's idea, dream of a metaverse, not not the profit in the metaverse, because there were none, right? And so what do we want here? Also, now we have. Is it a good thing? Let me just put it to the AI question. Is it a good thing in this perspective that old man is back at OpenAI because he's focusing on the profit, or would you rather have someone focusing on some weird mission they have?
Well, that's a very
This
interesting point, the way you phrased it. So I would say that even today I posted a study looking at ChatGPT versus Bard, and this, according to this study, which is a neutral study by someone I trust, they're showing at scale that Bard had better content, more accurate content, content that people like better. But all the discussion is about ChatGPT when there
mm,
are other competitors, there are other tools, there are other ways in which this is all affecting us. So I think that whether this is one of the things we've learned is that this is not about one person. None of this is about one person,
no,
right?
no.
It wasn't about Jack Dorsey. It wasn't about Zuckerberg. It isn't about Altman. It isn't about Musk. In Musk's case, it is about Musk only, I would say, because he is a total control over this product. It's not like it's a publicly traded company. At least these others have some public interest, or public, the public have some
Yeah.
ability to affect them. So I would say that as we look ahead, that history will have Altman as somebody really important who played a critical role, who brought this technology. But one of the good things about the generative AI phase of this versus the social media phase or even the internet phase, which was so dominated by American companies, American individuals, American entrepreneurs, this has got a chance to be more widespread. What we don't, the world doesn't need another thing coming out of Silicon Valley only, right?
Mm.
I want this to be more widespread. I want more European participation, innovation, invention on generative AI. Want more
A
African,
lot of
more
it's still
Asian.
driven by Silicon Valley. Yeah, but we don't have that, do we? I think also the Chinese law in generative AI or AI in general is that it can only be allowed to exist if it is non-communist. And I said immediately that also before this law came in that that Gen AI is liberalism on steroids. It can tell you anything. It will tell you anything. If you try to restrict it, there's way to jailbreak it. It can also infer things even if it hasn't been trained on it. So this is not a communist thing. It's not a Chinese thing. And Europe is also way behind because of our privacy laws. I think I'm not really sure about that. I don't know why Europe is behind. Africa is obviously way behind. What, we're still Silicon Valley focused on this, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, and but I want that to change. I'm hopeful that it can
Mm,
be changed. So, for example, if you remember, when when ChatGPT was clearly becoming more profit rather than non-profit, as Musk and others had wanted, these original other people wanted it to be a wanted a pause in
mm,
AI. They wanted it to stop so that we could reassess and everything else. Partly because Musk could wanted to catch up. That's why. But
yeah.
on a larger mission, like on a larger scale, it's impossible to stop it, because even if ChatGPT is paused for some reason, there's still research and other things happening around the world, and these large, there is an opportunity for other companies to be involved, and I'm seeing some interesting tools and other efforts from Europe and other places, Asia, Latin America, where they're saying this time we are not going to be left behind. Yes, Silicon
Mm,
Valley has a head start, but we're not going to be left behind. And with China, by the way, as you know, it's always complicated. One of the amazing things about China is that while I and others were focused on their great firewall and the issues of democracy and human rights. Why are they not allowing these tools there? Why are they blocking these things? All of
mm.
that. From a pure business point of view, it was genius, because what did they do? They created their own clones, stole them directly, and made
Yeah.
multi-billion-dollar corporations that are dominant in China.
Yeah, but my point is, can they even, is it possible to make a copy of ChatGPT or Bard or Claude that isn't that doesn't speak about liberalism or liberal
Yeah, they won't like
democracy,
it. That's
right?
the problem. You're right. That's gonna be an
I
issue.
I don't think they can do that,
They
and I
won't
think
like it.
that's where they're gonna get left behind.
Yep,
I think they also know that
I think you're right.
because it only works in a liberal society. It knows everything. It speaks about everything. You can cheat it to speak about everything. That doesn't work, right? It's not like blocking off sites on the internet. It doesn't work like that. I'm having trouble controlling it sometimes, right? So how on earth are they going to control it as well? Not that I'm better than China. That's not what I inferred. Uh, but let's just also we're already there to some extent. The societal impact of AI in general, and we're already discussing that, which was the next thing I wanted to bring up with you. Uh, but you have significant experience as a chief digital officer, and you can just elaborate on that if that's okay. And then bring in what would you do today if you had those same chief digital roles with the new AI that we have today, and and I'm not sure your first step would be, "Let's put it in Snapchat for all the children."
Yeah, so my background in terms of my chief digital officer work is that I was the CDO of Columbia University, working on the future of education. Before that,
Mhm,
CDO, and sorry, after that, CDO of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, working on the future of culture. And after that,
mhm.
City of New York, working on the future of cities and citizens. In each of these things, each of these roles, which I was blessed and honored to have, it was a real privilege in each
Yeah,
case.
awesome roles.
I learned so much about these issues that, as a journalist by training, as somebody who is in communications, you don't really appreciate what these different industries, even education's an industry, uh, how they deal with these topics, what it means for them on a daily basis to deal with technology. I'll give an example that it's very easy, to be wrong on on predicting the impact of technology. For example,
Yes.
the reason I became chief digital officer of Columbia is because of something called MOOCs. You might remember massive open online courses from
Mm.
Harvard and MIT and Coursera. These were
Yeah.
widely in 2012 considered to be something that will change education forever, that it'll completely turn upside down the world, that universities will go out of business because there will be everybody will be taking the same class from Stanford. In fact, a European, Sebastian Thrun, who is German, created uh, the first MOOC class at Stanford, this massive open online course and some 50,000 people took it that first day. But he also helped create the driverless car at
Mm.
at Google as part of his work at Google Labs, and he said that more people are scared of, in America anyway, of free education than they are of driverless cars. And uh, and then so there was so much hype around these MOOCs and how everybody was going to take it and it was going to change the world. When it was an interesting technology, it still matters. It's still good that it exists in the world. It has leveled somewhat, a little bit, the opportunity, just given more opportunities to more people. But to say it
Mhm.
would upend and change education, certainly American education, that has not happened. So, like that,
Because they spread skills, right? They spread skills more than they spread, the inquisitive, curious interaction with your professor, which is, to me, the center of education,
yeah,
actually.
so well put.
I'm a historian by trade,
Yeah,
when we talk about Ranke, he was an old German, that's the Danish history, discipline is sort of modeled on Ranke, the German historian's way of doing it, where he said that the centerpiece of his teaching was to take the student into the master's chamber, the professor's chamber, and teach him how to do history, not teach him history.
so
So,
interesting. I like that. I
mm,
like the way of thinking about that. So I saw a parallel when I went to the Met and thinking about my job was to help digitize and democratize art there, bringing it to the digital world in the way it was brought to the physical world. But I would say there's a parallel. Sitting in a gallery with a piece of art is the most special way to appreciate art. Same
mm,
thing with education, right? You and a professor and 5, 10 other students in a classroom, best way to learn. But it's not the only way to learn. It's not the only way to look at art, right? There's some technology where you can go deep inside a piece of art. You can zoom in. You can see things like in if you go to the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, it's amazing to sit there, but everything's so far away that you can't see the close-ups. You can't see all the details of the work of Michelangelo, right? So there
mm.
are now tools where you can zoom in and see art in a way that you can't. So that doesn't mean one is better than the other, and it's still better to sit in the Sistine Chapel and look up in awe at that. But if you want to get deeper, you want to get closer, digital can help. Same thing with in a classroom. It's best to be with a professor and learning one on one. But there are ways in which you can reach more people, get deeper, have a different perspective if you use the digital stuff. So it's always about how can digital improve by being complementing, supplementing the physical. That's the way I look at the world. Those two things
So
have.
that's how what we need to do with AI as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So instead of me just having it write whatever for me, doing copy and just posting it, it's supposed to supplement my skills and make it better. Like most of the people who are wary and scared of AI tends to be high educated and very well at writing. And I always tend to think, and I count myself among those because I'm also good at writing, but I still see there's so many people who are not good at writing who is getting immense help from using these generative AI tools.
Yes.
And I remember reading AI 2041 by Kai Fu Lee and Shen Kui Fan, I think, uh, where he says that generative AI, and he wrote this 2 years before ChatGPT, and it's really an amazing, inspiring book on how the world will look in 20 years because he has such a both a breadth and a vision and knowledge that it just makes sense what he's saying. But he says that education will be changed by this. Imagine that we can give education to everyone, everywhere, in the poorer parts of the world, where they don't have the infrastructure to go to a school or classroom. They don't have teachers. You can actually just give them a small earplug and chat GPT, and then have them interact with a teacher that will tell them most basic stuff. So what do you think about that, as West and globally, and looking at from where we are in a privileged tech position and down to the poorest parts of the world? How is AI really the big change here, um, our big paradigm change, at least in education and culture? You have very very central experience in those areas.
Sure. I would say that one more thing to add to that is medical care and healthcare.
Mm,
Vinod Khosla, who is one of Silicon Valley's most influential people, investors, etc., he says that he believes that in less than 10 years, if he gets cancer and someone in India in a village gets cancer, he will have access to the best doctors in the world in California, in New York, etc. But that the chances of better healthcare in terms of his cancer is going to come for the gentleman who gets the cancer in this village in India. Why? Because he will be forced to use AI tools, AI doctors, doctors using AI much
mm,
more than in California, where they will rely, because he has access to the best doctors, they will not rely on AI. But those AI supplemented or dominated doctors that that gentleman in India will be using will have better outcomes than his own doctors in California. So a that's a very different way of thinking about this. And I can tell you myself, I had a colonoscopy this year, and this is a public service announcement to any of your listeners who are above an age where a doctor tells you to get a colonoscopy. Please get it. Um, and when I got it, my doctor, who was in his 60s, he said he was feeling reinvigorated about his work, about his profession because of AI. He's saying
mm,
that the camera and the software that powers the camera now has AI in it, and therefore it can help him in ways that he just his eye and his training itself were not enough. And he believes he
mm,
saved dozens of lives already in just a couple of years of using AI that he wouldn't have been able to save if it was just him and his eyesight and his experience. So,
That's also because he's not complacent. I think what you described with the Indian doctor and the American doctor in history, this is something that has been a theory for a long time. So, a funny thing that I'm referring back to my history studies a couple of times here,
mhm,
because I work in tech and worked in tech for a very long time now. But we talk about China and the reason China didn't become modern as a high level equilibrium trap. So China had such a high level when they were pre-modern. They were really good at being pre-modern, like the best ever, and they'd been that for thousands of years. For thousands of years. But the West, especially Europe, were really terrible at being pre-modern. We had wars, we had plague, we had no education level. We just it was basically mud everywhere. It's like the
mhm,
Monty Python in the Search for the Holy Grail. It looked like that, just mud and people doing stupid things. That was Europe. It's terrible at being pre-modern, but China were really good at it. But we had to take new technology, reinvent ourselves, rethink the way we did things because we had to get away from being terrible. We wanted to get out of the problems. And that's why we jumped at every new technology, whereas China were like, no, we don't need it. The marginal gains from using this technology is not good enough to overthrow our current system that's been working for hundreds of years. Is it the same trap that we might be seeing in the West, or we should be actually be scared about?
I think it's a very well. This is where history matters, right? I myself studied
Mm.
history in undergrad, and I
Oh,
think
nice.
I think what you're describing is really a good way to understand uh, this challenge, this opportunity, and where we go from
Mm.
here.
So you made a non-scary guide. You're touring with the non-scary guide to AI, Sree's non-scary guide to AI. But my question is always, my wife also gave me a book that said arguments for humans. Arguments to argue for humans that we still have a right to exist and why we still matter. Why humans still matter, and so that's because everyone's saying this is dangerous. So there's this scaremongering to some extent around it. I think, which I think personally is a little bit over exaggeration. It's too much. I don't think we have to be scared yet. There's no indication that we have anything autonomous yet. We still have hallucinations, no world models, context problems, you name it. But
You're
why are you
hopeful.
doing the non-scary guide?
You're hopeful. I like that, and I think you're right. There's a lot of people who are saying that these companies, the tech companies themselves issued a statement saying, signed by Sam Altman and Bill Gates and all these people, saying
Mm,
that the the dangers from AI are at the same existential threat level as pandemics and nuclear war. And
mm.
so it's not us saying that there's a danger, it's the people who know it best who are saying it's a danger. The Center for AI Safety saying it's a danger.
Yeah, but they keep on doing it. I think it's just bad press is also good press.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
a
No, no,
journalist.
look, but this is not press. This is them announcing it. This is
Yeah.
not and it's a different tactic, right? Like, think about tobacco. For 60 years, they said it's good for you. And in the fossil fuel companies, even today, say they have nothing to do with climate change. So this is the opposite. They're saying we are dangerous, but it gets them off the hook. Then they say we don't have to worry. You guys do whatever you
Yeah,
want. It's not
there's
our
not their
fault.
responsibility. They can just keep on developing them. But
Exactly, exactly.
saying it's dangerous like that is also an attention grabber. So
Oh,
now everyone's like, "Oh, I need to look at this. Oh, fire is dangerous. You remember, kid, don't play with fire." And what's the first thing you did?
you played with fire, exactly.
Yeah.
So I will say a couple of things. One is that I'm not saying, by calling it non-scary, it's just the way I approach technology, as I have for all these years. Like I say, this is not a course for people doing AI, it's a course for people having AI done to them. This is, like I used to say, with tech, like, I'm not an engineer, but I can translate the work of engineers to everyday people. And so that's how I focused it. But in terms of where we're going with this AI, it's there's a there are two things happening at the same time. People saying this is the greatest thing ever, and people saying it's the most dangerous thing ever. As a result of it,
mm,
it's on top of mind, right? That's what you're saying, that it forces
mm,
everybody to pay attention to this,
yeah,
when
yeah,
in fact there are so many other problems happening in the world right now. But in a way, I mean, just think about the amount of drama and attention paid over that 1 week period with AI, and what happened with ChatGPT and OpenAI, the company.
mm,
Like, I can't remember the last time this much attention was paid in such a short time. Obviously, over a longer period, Twitter, over a longer period, there have been other companies who've had that. Or if you go all the way back to the way we had Steve Jobs leave Apple, come back, that took years. This all happened in
mm,
5 7 days, and it was
yeah,
just kind of amazing. And so they have got our attention. You've seen the startups in Europe that have gotten 100 million euros for 4 weeks of existence because they have the
yeah,
word AI in it. Companies releasing press releases just saying they're doing AI, putting AI in
yeah.
everything, as if that will solve their problems. So I think we're all learning in this process, and how we learn also matters, and what we do with it really matters, I think.
So you're also right now. We are actually you're usually in the U.S. in New York, obviously with most of the CDO positions you had being from New York. You're from New York. I assume, Sri. I haven't actually asked you where you live, but I assume you live in New York City.
I do my just my background. My family is from India. My father was an Indian diplomat, so we lived all over the world. I was born in Tokyo. He had no problem
Mm,
picking me out in the window. He said the brown one was mine, and I do live in New York. And at the moment, I'm in Stockholm for
yeah,
the
exactly.
Nobel Prizes week. There's so much going on, as you know, or as you're aware, certainly living in Europe, about the Nobels and everything. We are in the middle of, so December 10th every year is the awards are announced, but there's a whole week of dialogues and events and lights and all of that. So Stockholm and Oslo take this very seriously, as they should. And there's
Mm,
so much energy as a result of these prizes. And by the way, named for Alfred Nobel, who invented a piece of technology which did great damage as well as good in the world,
mm,
dynamite, right? Because they were
yeah.
able to create all the roads and so much that we've done, but also do great damage in terms of use as a weapon. So that's why
You're
he
associated with Nobel. That's why you're there as
Yes,
well with the Nobel
I'm
Prize.
yes, I'm on the board of Nobel Prize Outreach, which is, so I always, so when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, can you help me get a Nobel?" And they think I'm not.
That's not my question. That was not my question. I have not invented anything.
Yeah, not
I
yet.
think,
It's not too late. There are people who start in their 60s or 70s. But
yes.
but so the Nobel Prizes have the awards themselves. There's a foundation. There are the institutes that are entrusted by Nobel in his will uh, to give out, to select the winners. But we are part of Nobel Prize Outreach, which our job is to uh, get the Nobel Prizes into the world. So the
Mm,
web, the social, uh, physical events around the world that they do. Last year, they had this year at a big conference in Seoul as well as Washington. So it's,
nice.
the idea is that the Nobel Prizes need to remain relevant in the lives of people. That's why they have this. I mean, you might say, wait a minute, you're the Nobel Prizes. Why do you need to do this? But we want more impact. We want to be thought of not just when the awards are announced or at the banquet. We want it to be, the impact of the work of the Nobels has to be explained and made relevant to the lives of everyday people. That's important. Otherwise,
Staying relevant
yeah,
and on communication channels and
exactly,
in people's minds.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
So don't you need to do that? Don't you need an AI award this year? Do you think an AI prize?
Well, this is as you know, this came up when Barack Obama got the Nobel Prize the very first year that he was president. Even the nominations end very early in the year, so he was president for probably for a couple of weeks when he was
Yeah.
when he was nominated and when he won.
The hope, right? The hope.
Yes, he was given an award for the hope rather than for
Yeah.
the work. Look, the Nobel Prizes have acknowledged when they've been wrong, including most, to me, the biggest mistake the Nobel's ever made were not giving the Nobel Prize in Peace to Mahatma Gandhi. It doesn't make any
Mm,
sense that he doesn't have it. They have done, now that all these years later, they have done a full mea culpa explanation of everything that happened, and why even that year they didn't give out a Nobel. He should have gotten it multiple times. He could have gotten it multiple times. But in 1948, when he was assassinated in January, that year they did not give an award as their way of saying we should have given it when he was alive. There's a rule that it has to be
mm.
cannot be posthumous, and so there's no living person this year who deserves that prize. So no one is perfect, right? No one is.
But as you said with Alfred Nobel, he invented dynamite, was both good and bad, and you also had, I think, now my Nobel history maybe come to attest. So was it 1990 that the South African both Mandela and what was his name?
The clerk, yeah.
The Kirk, yeah, yeah, they both won. They shared one, which I think also was highly controversial. Is today extremely controversial that Mandela had to share it with the clerk. So could we do the same with AI, saying all the bad things that's going to come from it, obviously, but also all the good things? Do we need a prize for that as well? It's not. It's not. It is something that's going to change the world.
Yeah,
I'm just,
so,
that was just the question, right?
there are also constraints, right? They have to
The
be
invention of the transformer, right?
Yeah, they have to
Mhm.
be in categories such as
Mm,
peace, literature,
yeah.
physics. So I think physics is where we saw in 20, we saw one of the winners was because of the batteries that, the technology that powers the batteries in our
Mm,
everyday lives, every cell phone, every iPad, all of that are have an impact because of this gentleman's what he did with the battery technology that we all use now. So this is the kind of thing that we can think about in terms of impact, that the work, and maybe there'll be something in physics. I don't know if the internet got an award. I don't think
no.
so, but it should have, right?
Which is a little bit weird, isn't it? It should have one, shouldn't it?
Yeah. But who is it? Maybe some of these things are very hard to give to one person. You could certainly give the World Wide Web to Vinton Cerf, but there was no web without the internet. And the internet was, the Department of Defense in the United States. You don't want to give them maybe recognition. So
Yeah,
they're
but
all,
that
there's
that
all
must be a
kinds.
problem they know,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Technology don't come on mountains, as I think I alluded. It doesn't come from Mount Sinai to someone.
Right.
It's always on the shoulders of giants and other people. But anyway, that was just an interesting question. Also, because it's funny that you're so close to me right now. I'm in Copenhagen, you're in
Yeah,
Stockholm for the
exactly.
Nobel, which is really funny.
Yes.
But Sri, this has been a great conversation, and I really enjoy it. And I think we could go on for a long time, especially if I took up Elon Musk again. I think we could.
Don't get me started.
No, I'll try
By the
not
way,
to
the way
get
the
you
best
started again.
best way to fight my jet lag is to mention Elon Musk, and then I get riled up. I should also say that I was talking about impact of the Nobels and how they are in the world. And I misspoke. I talked about physics as where John Goodenough, Stanley Whittingham, and Akira Yoshino won in 2019 for lithium ion batteries. That was not physics award, but as you know, it was a chemistry award. And so uh, nobody's perfect, I said, and here I am making a major blunder on your podcast.
No, it's perfect. This brings me to the final question. So, in the previous two episodes, I always ask, what is the only constant? And the first one, Ian Barkin said it was the laws of enterprise physics, the way an enterprise can adapt to change. And Stephen Pemberton said it was exponential change. He he's built his career on Moore's law, and he believes that is still going to be the only constant going forward. That things will keep on changing exponentially and get better. So I want to ask you, Sree, what is the only constant?
The answer to that, the traditional answer and the right answer is change. I would say that one of my favorite expressions is that I'm all for progress. It's change I cannot stand, because it affects me. I want the world to get better, but I don't want it to impact me. I'm too lazy, I'm too slow, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. But this is the reality of the world, right? That we have so much going on, and that you have got to keep learning, keep adapting, keep adjusting. And it's not easy with the way everything is created and the way everything is changing all the time. So I think we have a role as folks who want to understand the world, who want to help make the world a better place, that we have to pay attention to what is happening, pay attention to trying to understand where things are going, and then how can we help along the way. Because if you don't do that, if you don't accept that change is going to be part of our lives, like I have two 20-year olds, twins, and their way of looking at the world in terms of jobs has changed in since they were 18 to now because of AI. And what does that mean? And so we recently had a conversation about this. What does this mean in terms of what jobs they're going to take, right? And that's because they're 20. What about the people who are 15 today or 8 today? So in each of these cases, things are going to change dramatically, and they cannot predict that. And trying to keep up is going to be very, very difficult. And we have, I think, hope that we will all be paying enough attention that we'll be able to make a change or help make that change or make things better. But that's not going to always be possible. And so I'm excited, but worried at the same time, and hoping that conversations like this will help us all be more aware of the opportunities.
That's a great final note, Sree. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and looking forward to meeting you in person after all the changes that have happened, after the world has been in this lockdown and everything. It's good to be out, and I look forward to connecting with you in person in New York or in Copenhagen or somewhere else.
That would be awesome, Sree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.